body, baby, do that conga. No, you can't control yourself any longer. Come and shake your body, baby, do that conga. No, you can't control yourself any longer.
Welcome to the 4th World Circular Economy Forum and the first ever virtual WCEF. My name is Veera Heinonen and I will be co-hosting this event with my Sitra colleague Tim Forslund in Helsinki. So why are we here in Helsinki and not in Toronto? Well, as a result of this global pandemic, the world has gone topsy-turvy and the Toronto WCEF is scheduled for next autumn. But the pandemic has certainly shown the light on how connected the world is and also how outdated today's linear, wasteful and unstable economic system is. So therefore the relevance of the circular economy has now been amplified. And through digital solutions, we can get more value from less, build resilience and help solve the multiple crises associated with overshooting our planetary boundaries.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reshape our economy. Outside of the European Union, but a fraction of recovery measures have been green. And of these measures, but a fraction has been circular. Our climate and biodiversity targets will be impossible to reach without the circular economy. Therefore, it must be at the heart of building back better. Much remains to be done, but after this World Circular Economy Forum, I am hopeful that a good circular future will feel like it's possible. And also that you will have a better sense of just how we can make that happen. This is an open, interactive event, so if you have any questions, do send us a message via the chat box or the email under the info section of the platform. We will also encourage you to take part of and in all the discussions and ask questions to our panelists.
And next we'll have our first studio guest joining us, and I'm pleased to welcome Sitra President Jyrki Katainen. Welcome, Jyrki.
Thank you very much.
So before Sitra, Jyrki has served as the Prime Minister of Finland, and until late last year, you were at the European Commission as Vice President for Jobs, Growth, Investment and Competitiveness. And you were also at the drawing table as the first Circular Economy Action Plan was created in 2015. But tell us, Jyrki, what will be happening next? I believe we'll have a former colleague of yours joining us online.
Indeed, the first speaker of the event will be Frans Timmermans, who is Executive Vice President of the European Commission, who is, by the way, also the top official in charge of climate action, EU's climate action. Frans Timmermans and I, together with then Environment Commissioner Karmenu Vella, indeed we worked on the first Circular Economy Action Plan. And I think it was a good start, good basis for the current Green Deal. And now I'm very eager to hear if Frans has something interesting to say about the Green Deal, which is the major policy initiative of the current Ursula von der Leyen's Commission. So very good to hear you, very good to get you here, Frans, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jyrki, and it's so good to see you, even if it's in a service as well. Dear friends, I'm speaking to you from the attic of our home. One of our kids was tested positive for COVID, so we are now all in lockdown. But still, I have the opportunity to talk to you this morning, and I think the circular economy is something I'm passionate about. Jyrki and I worked on this for many years together. We jointly, under his leadership, made the first Circular Economy Action Plan, and now, of course, we're working in completely different circumstances. When we presented our Green Deal, it was in response to, in fact, a number of challenges we had. First of all, of course, the existence threatening challenge of the climate crisis combined with the biodiversity crisis, and also the fact that we're in the middle of an industrial revolution that will create tectonic changes in our societies and our economy that we need to address. We never anticipated the pandemic, but there it came. And now the crisis we face is even more compelling. Before the pandemic, perhaps we still had a choice to change now or to change a bit later. And this was sort of the debates we had with many people. Should we change now or could we wait a bit? This option is no longer on the table. We have no choice. We have to make sure that the funds that have been mobilized worldwide, but especially also in the European Union, are used wisely in our recovery efforts. Are used wisely, and there I mean are used in a way that sets our society and our economy on a sustainable track. I think what is the biggest threat today in this recovery phase, and I hope we can soon get to the recovery phase, by the way, is that we would start throwing money at the old economy just to survive. And then this money will soon be stranded in assets that have no future. You know, I became a grandfather 2 months ago, and when I held my grandson for the first time, this thought came to me that what is the world going to be like when he's 20 years old? And the next thought was that if we get it wrong now, in the next couple of years, the dystopian world he might inherit is something I don't want to be felt responsible for. So we need to get it right now. And I honestly believe that there is no way we can come out of this crisis. There is no way we can confront the life-threatening issue of the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis without a circular economy. We should never forget that half of the total greenhouse gas emissions and more than 90% of biodiversity loss come from resource extraction and processing. So to achieve climate neutrality, halt biodiversity loss, and ensure a livable planet for all humanity, we must make a successful transition to a circular economy at the European level, but also at the global level. We cannot continue treating our habitat as a bottomless source. Our pattern of take, make, use, and dispose must really end, and it must end now. We must profoundly change the way products and services are designed, made, and consumed. This transition to the circular economy is not about stopping or forbidding. It is full of opportunities for businesses, for people, for the economy. And I think we have demonstrated that in the new European Circular Economy Action Plan, and Jyrki, as I said, is in fact the father of this. We want Europe to transform into a smarter and more service-based economy, where we use less energy and resources, and where we develop and use our only sustainable products that are durable, reusable, repairable, and safe. Products that are made for high quality recycling, which is the second option. Products that are increasingly made of recycled materials themselves. To that end, we will present next year the European Sustainable Product Policy Framework. As a priority, we will focus on key sectors where the sustainability challenges are the biggest, such as ICT, construction, packaging, and textiles. And it becomes all the more urgent because one of the key projects in our recovery, as far as the Commission is concerned, will be the renovation wave. And we could perhaps help construction, one of the sectors that really needs to change, to go circular much quicker than it has been going until now. In parallel, we will modernize Europe's waste management system. We want to ensure a well-functioning market of the highest quality recycled materials and reduce our dependency on primary raw materials. We believe that this will provide for new, innovative jobs, for a wide variety of skills. And I say this, but I have to add immediately, upskilling our labor force is going to be an incredible challenge, but essential. You could have a future in Europe where there's unemployment and unfulfilled jobs. That is a real possibility if we don't make sure we skill our labor force. It's an essential element of the circular economy. In this, we want to work closely with our international partners, obviously, especially those who share our ambitions, and we want to convince others who don't share them yet to go into the same direction. To make such cooperation easier, we will propose a global circular economy and resource efficiency alliance. We also intend to start discussions on an international agreement for sustainable management of natural resources. And we're committed to push for an ambitious global agreement on plastics to stop plastic from polluting our oceans and from, directly threatening our health. And these issues are issues that citizens in Europe feel very passionately about. People get really worried when they see that if we don't change, 50 years from now, there will be more plastics than fish in the sea. If we don't stop deforestation, this will be a huge impulse for even worse climate situation. So the circular economy, as far as we're concerned, means business. It should be the economic model of the future, not only for Europe, but for the entire world. If we collectively get this right, industrialized and developing countries alike, we can create a healthy economy for decades to come and give future generations a sustainable life on this planet. The time to take decisive steps is now. If there is anything at all that could be considered positive in this horrible pandemic, it is the unique opportunity to use the enormous amounts we will spend on our recovery today for building the green, inclusive societies we absolutely need for tomorrow. Using the recovery to support all business models, as I said before, will create locked-in assets, and this is something we can't afford to do. You know that European leaders have agreed on a comprehensive recovery package of over 1.8 billion euros. At least 30% of these funds will support climate action, and all the spending will have to do no harm. That's the principle we apply. Europe's recovery package unlocks many possibilities for substantial investment in the circular economy. I would also like to encourage other countries and regions across the globe to use this moment to think about the next steps. What the world needs to do, and what sort of world we need to live. And I am encouraged by the fact that Xi Jinping announced last week that China will reach carbon neutrality by 2060, which is a huge step. And I'm really excited to see how this is going to be reflected in their plans. So we can do this, but people always say this is about saving the planet. No, it's not. The planet existed perfectly well without us for a very, very long time. If we screw up, it will perfectly be able to take care of itself for a very, very long time. This is about saving humanity. And I think this is a collective effort we can do. It's possible, but we can't afford to sit on our hands and wait. We need to act now. Thank you very much. And Jyrki, it was great to see you again online.
Hartelijk dank, Frans Timmermans. I think you made it very clear that there is no throwing money at the old economy. And we have multiple crises to solve, like biodiversity and the climate issues that you mentioned. The circular economy, it's a model of the future, and this is not about saving the planet, it's about saving humanity.
Wow, that was inspirational, wasn't it?
Indeed.
But just to take our audience back to the planet Earth, really, I'm going to give you some technical instructions. And just a reminder that you're watching this live broadcast, WCF Online, on our event platform. The platform will give you access to all the relevant information regarding the program. So although we are further away from each other than in previous WCFs, we have also never been closer, as the threshold to reach out is lower than ever. So speaking of which, we want to hear from your thoughts in a short poll, and the poll can be found in the vote section of the chat box. So press the vote button on the top bar in the chat box and choose your option and click it. And so really, I mean, the question is, why are you attending the WCF Online? And there are quite a few options, and we are really hoping to hear from you soon. Oh wow, I think, Tim, the clear winner is already showing.
Yeah, it's quite clear. And hopefully we can share some, fresh updates throughout the whole event, not just this session.
Absolutely. But really expecting to hear the newest developments in the circular economy field is something that seems to be leading the votes, and I think it's a fair point.
Yeah, indeed.
You need some takeaways in order to be spending your time on something.
Yeah.
All right, so Tim, what's happening next?
Well, we have our next speaker, Inger Andersen, the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP. With more than 30 years of experience in environmental sustainability, international development, economics, and policy making, she will share with us how the pandemic might affect progress on achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and how the circular economy can be used as a tool in achieving these goals. Welcome, Inger Andersen. Jeg er virkelig glad for, at du kan være med os her i dag.
Wow. Wow, I'm impressed. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's so very great that we have this European segment of the World Circular Economy Forum, which is hosted by Canada this year with support from Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund. And it's so great that in spite of this incredible challenge around COVID, that we are still able to do this and frankly take it bigger because it is online. So let me thank everyone for making this happen. I don't need to tell anyone here that the pandemic is happening with millions of deaths and job losses. We all know these terrible implications. But as Frans very rightly said, in fact, we are facing these three planetary crises caused by our unsustainable production and consumption, SDG 12. The three crises are climate crisis, the nature and biodiversity crisis, and the pollution and waste crisis. And it's fueled by us and our unsustainable production and consumption, where SDG 12 speaks to reaching sustainable production and consumption, which of course entails circularity. So speeding up and scaling circularity and sustainable consumption and production is absolutely essential if we are to get Earth systems into a degree of stability that will afford our stability too. And our extraction and processing of resources causes half of the global greenhouse gas emissions, much of biodiversity loss, and of course the water stress that we face. And yet when we look on the International Resources Panel, and thanks to Europe and many others for supporting this important work, we are seeing that that our resource extraction is predicted to double from 90 billion tons to 190 billion by 2060 if we continue as is. And today, when we look globally, only about 8.6% of the world is quote unquote circular. The rest, we take it out of the environment into the economy. We make money and jobs and growth, which is good. And then when we're done with it, what do? We discard it back into the environment as waste, refuse, emissions, etc. That's not the way to go. When we are nearly 10 billion people on this world, we surely cannot continue to discard, dispose, and emit back into environment. So there are three things that we at UNEP hold that have to happen. And this is where I salute all the countries that are seeking to put in place the first thing, which is the right policies and the right incentives. Because without these, frankly, it would be individual, philanthropic, goodwill, etc. You have to have the guardrails. And so the policies that can incentivize intelligent design for circularity, extended product life, establish the infrastructure for waste management and recycling, and yes, fine, when there is transgression, and don't export your waste to poor countries. So we are seeing these policies grow. For example, in Nigeria, we at UNEP, we're very privileged to work with the government on extended producer responsibility legislation that once into place will increase recycling rates on the 880,000 tons of e-waste that Nigeria generates every year, which goes into open burning, etc., and often with very, very poor sanitary conditions. Or look at Colombia. Colombia is the first Latin American country with a national circular economy strategy, which targets nearly 18% of recycling and reuse by 2030. That is not easy, but bravo to Colombia for stepping up. So getting the incentives in place, first thing. Secondly, business and finance need to step up. Now, even though we need the guardrails, the legislative guardrails, businesses and investors should not wait for legislation to act. Because if waiting, you will just be destroying the natural world and therefore ultimately the bottom line, the company's bottom line and investors' returns. Again, here there are some progresses to be seen. Signatories to the New Plastic Economy Global Commitment presents about 20% of plastic packaging used globally. That is good. We'd like to see more, but 20%, we're getting there. Over 200 businesses are on board, which is great. And commitments of 3 major companies alone to reduce virgin plastic use adds up to reducing CO2 emissions by 8 million tons by 2025. So we're marking some steps even without necessarily all the legislation in place. And we know that once this legislation is down, we will see more. On the finance front, take the Italian bank Intesa Sanpaolo. It's funding projects and businesses under a 5 billion euro credit facility that they've established to support circularity, to support circular economy trends. Bravo to that. We need more of those kind of commitments. The third thing that we need to do is obviously we need to reach consumers with new technology, embracing digitalization, collaboration, innovation, education is the best way to increase the adoption and impact of sustainable lifestyles. There are apps that we have downloaded when they are available, where we can exchange, buy soon to expire food, share rides, and all of these things that will enhance circularity. Many platforms in North America, for example, have reduced food waste by connecting consumers with supermarkets and restaurants for surplus foods. These platforms have distributed tens of millions of ingredients and meals to others who were in need of these. So new technologies can harness the energy of tech-savvy youth, keen to be part of the solution to the environmental challenge. And so we need to take advantage of that opportunity. So let me close by saying that circularity and sustainable consumption and production are absolutely essential to delivering on every single multilateral agreement that we have in place, from the SDGs to the Paris Agreement, to the post-2020 biodiversity agreement, to all the chemical agreements. Because in turning our unsustainable production and consumption around, we can tackle these 3 planetary crises, the climate crisis, the nature and biodiversity crisis and the pollution and waste crisis. We have the power to make that transition. We just need to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Inger Andersen. We have much ahead of us, and like you mentioned, we need to look both at policy, finance and technology, and we'll certainly be touching upon these topics next. But I'm delighted to welcome Stintje van Veldhoven, the Netherlands Minister of Environment and Housing. And we are particularly excited to have the Minister with us, as we know she's on a really tight schedule. But it is important to remind everyone that the Netherlands will be hosting the next WCEF event this coming spring. The high-level event in the Netherlands will address how circular economy is key in solving the climate crisis. And we are hoping to hear some pointers to how this will feed into COP26, which we were eagerly waiting for already before, and even more so now that we have to wait until the end of next year. But Minister van Veldhoven, Inger Andersen mentioned that the CE is key in recovering from COVID-19 and solving other shared global challenges. So what's your take on that? I mean, how do you see the CE's role in the recovery?
Hello, it's great to see you, and thanks so much for the very inspiring talks. Good to talk to all of you again. I'd like to concur with a number of points that were made. First of all, of course, Frans said, it's not about the planet, it's about humanity. And I think there's no truer summary of what we need to do than that. I think Inger very, very rightly said there are 3 points that we need to work on. We need to work on policies, on businesses and on consumers, and we need them all. For me, I think if you look at the potential, Frans also mentioned it, it's not just only half the problem, it's also half of the solutions. So it's not a goal in itself, but it's a solution to all of those 3 crises that Inger referred to. It's basically a secret weapon to solve all of these issues, but it should be a lot less secret very soon. Yesterday, to give you an example, concrete illustration, yesterday I was at the opening of the Dutch Sustainable Fashion Week. And there we talked about the impact of textiles on our CO2 emissions. And do you know that the emissions of the textiles industries are as much as all of the international aviation and shipping combined? So if we only look at the energy side, we're not tackling the problem. We need to look at the resources side. And there's lots of opportunities for change, because basically we're wasting so much that we could reuse, and by reusing that we can save CO2, we can create new jobs. So there's lots of real opportunities there.
Thank you, Minister. Now that's in fact a question coming through from the audience, and also what Tim and I would have asked you is also what can actually the Netherlands teach other countries about accelerating a circular economy? That's a question coming through from the audience, and we know that the Netherlands is a front runner. In fact, the Netherlands has the highest circular material use rate in the EU, around 30%. So please let us into your secret. What is the key to your success?
Well, I think first of all, we try to learn from everybody. And that is absolutely what we need to do. We need to share all of those good ideas, good best practices. And let me thank all of those other front runners that have been inspiring me, not in the last year yourself, with everything you've done, and with Frans, with everything you have done in the EU. So for me, what are 3 key issues? I think first, it's about bringing new partners together. Who would have thought that a major soda company would need to partner with a waste collection company to ensure 100% recyclable bottles? We need to bring together new partners. Together, those partners can go faster and further. Again, an example that I had from that meeting that I had on textiles yesterday. A major clothing company would like to have more recycled material in its clothes. An entrepreneur would love to invest in increasing and scaling up the production of secondary fibers, but for that they need to have a customer that is willing to take those large volumes. And an innovative company would love to produce those large amounts of fabric, but they need a company who has invested in scaling up and bringing down the cost of the fibers. If we bring those partners together, we can lower the cost, increase the production, and scale up and move quicker on the circular economy. So new partnerships are key. Together we can move faster and further. And this is, for example, what we've done with the Plastic Pact. Then innovation. There still is a lot of innovation that's needed. And we can share knowledge and we can share innovation, and we need to invest in innovation for tackling all of those technical issues with the circular economy. And then there's markets. I think this is also what Inga referred to. We need to set the policies right. We need to create the markets for secondary materials. And that is why I am very much looking forward to the initiatives by the European Commission on the new product policy. If there is a mandatory amount of recycled plastics in every plastic bottle, or a mandatory amount of recycled fibers in every jeans, then we create a market, and then the market has a reason to innovate and to scale up and to speed up. So Frans, there's no waiting, speed that up as much as possible as you can, please.
Thank you for the fantastic examples, Minister, very concrete. Just one quick question and then we'll let you go. And as you'll be hosting the next WCEF, what do you see, I mean, how useful do you see platforms like the WCEF in accelerating the CE?
Well, it's crucial, because I think the first thing that we need to do is create much more awareness about the link between the climate crisis and the circular economy solution. I think that's much too much a secret, far too much a secret. We need to get the word out. These kind of meetings are crucial for identifying what we can jointly do, how we can jointly raise the awareness, and how we can jointly ensure that we move on faster. There's lots of low-hanging fruit. We need to start picking it, and we can only do that if we send out this very clear message at the highest level, at the biggest scale. And for that, WCEF is fantastic, and also the COP needs to know it. Everybody needs to know it, and we can jointly do that by joining forces also in WCEF.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry I have to leave for a extra cabinet meeting on COVID, but let me just say we are now experiencing in all our societies the disruption of these kind of crises. And we are the climate crisis is also upcoming. So let's not be surprised by those effects. Let's learn from the effects that we want to avoid and act as speedily as we can right now on the climate crisis through the circular economy solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, couldn't agree. It's we're no longer surprised by anything, I think, and it's about being anti-fragile and using these disruptions to our advantage, which I think we're really happy to have with us, Stintje van Veldhoven. I would now also take the chance to remind our viewers to keep asking questions to our speakers. Keep them coming, keep them flowing. And we've also heard from the European Commission Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans on that this is about the planet, it's about people, especially about people. Also on September 16, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen outlined in her State of the Union speech an even more ambitious carbon reduction target. And like Frans Timmermans mentioned as well, there was a pledge from China last week as well. Or I think the wording that Ursula von der Leyen has also used is systemic modernization across our economy, society, and industry. And to me, that sounded like a call to action to speed up our efforts in the circular economy, in which the European Union strives to be a leading force. But to be more concrete, how exactly can the circular economy help reboot the economy? More on that next. And I'm happy to welcome, taking over from Minister van Veldhoven, Vice Minister Roald Lapeyre. And it's also great to have back with us in the studio our Sitra President Jyrki Katainen. Jyrki Katainen, I think that's the main question of the event. How can the circular economy help to reboot the economy at this point?
Actually, it's pretty easy, because circular economy, I find it as an industrial arm of climate policy. But not only that, because circular economy can be seen running the economy while reducing emissions. But also, it's the way to organize the economy and business well and keep economy running while reducing the waste of raw material. And circular economy is also the way to run good and robust economic growth while addressing biodiversity loss. So basically, circular economy is a tool which can be used for reducing the emissions, addressing biodiversity loss, and also replacing fossil-based products by bio-based products. So when I still was working in the European Commission, we decided that this is not just a greenwashing program. Circular economy is a systemic change. And in order to make it happen well, we have to recognize the basic fundamentals of market economy. So basically we have to use our regulatory power to reshape the market economy so that the economy can grow. Now, thanks to COVID-19, there is very little positive, but there are also some positive elements, because now member states or the countries are willing and they are forced to stimulate the economy. So now the question is how to stimulate the economy. And I would like to see many countries to invest more public resources to research and develop and innovation which boost circular economy. This is just one of the examples. But it's not only about money. Frans Timmermans listed a whole range of policy measures which are equally important, even more important than public money used for boosting circular economy. So the whole thing is to use market regulatory tools for creating level playing field, also boosting international trade, and creating incentives. Inger Andersen also mentioned that we need incentives for more sustainable business models. So it's quite striking that currently only 9% of all the resources we exploit ends up to recycling. So in other words, 90% are wasted, and it's wasted of money, it's wasted of resources, and it's bad for our planets. So I must say that even though we have challenges ahead, I'm quite optimistic, because this current linear business model isn't sustainable even from economic point of view.
Thank you. And I believe we have also another guest with us.
Yes, Roald Lapeyre.
Yes, go ahead, Tim. That's fine.
Well, we've heard from both Van Veldhoven and Jyrki Katainen. I would just like to invite your comments to add to the previous discussion. And Jyrki Katainen has mentioned the importance also of biodiversity in this context. So let's hear from Roald.
And lovely to have you with us, Vice Minister.
Yes, thank you, and happy, of course, to take over from our minister, and thank you for the way you've enthusiastically put forward the issue that is in front of us when it comes to the circular economy. And I would first of all like to take up from what Jyrki just said on being optimistic. I think we have a task indeed to be optimistic, and there's reason to be optimistic. Although, of course, the facts are there, and the 90% biodiversity loss Frans Timmermans referred to as a result of material use, but also 50% of all our CO2 emissions are related to material use, and this is something I think many people overlook. It is generally accepted that the energy transition is necessary for becoming climate neutral, but the fact that we need a material transition, that we need a full circular economy to be indeed climate neutral, is something I think we should be reiterating, because it's part of the big task we have in front of us. And I would concur with what was just said also by Jyrki, that we need our economy to our players, our business sector also to participate in this very much. And here we foresee a combination of government action that works as a stimulus, but also sets clear targets We have, of course, in the Netherlands, the target of 50% raw material reduction in 2030 and full circularity in 2050. That's a clear target, and hopefully will lead to, of course, investments to reach that target. We combine it with government policy stimulating that, but also clearly setting, for an example, targets when it comes to reuse of certain materials. And we see that in practice, for an example, in the textile sector, our minister just mentioned, but also in the plastic sector, as absolutely necessary to indeed move. And that is, I think, what we all need to do, not just as governments, but also as private sector, as well as citizens.
Thank you so much for that, Roald Lapeyre. We'll now hear from Jyrki Katainen.
Yeah, well, actually, it's a very nice role that you mentioned textile sector. Also, Tientje mentioned textile sector. It reminded me a very good example what the Dutch government has done a couple of years ago. Dutch military actually used public procurement tool for boosting recycling in textile industry. Because the military or defense ministry acquired clothes for soldiers, and one of the conditions was that the clothes must be made of recycled material. So everybody can imagine what kind of boost it is for recycled material business. So this is something which I really would like to spread all over. This is a very good example, and in many countries public sector plays a crucial role. This is also lesson learned, which I hope the Finnish government will listen.
And I think that brings us to our next question, basically. We got that from the viewers. What would you think Finland's success story would be? What's the example that you would like to bring out from Finland, Jyrki Katainen?
Yeah, Finland is pretty good in circular economy. And I must say that one of the main reasons is that our industry, traditional industry, has been so forward-looking. So they have been there have been forerunners in business area, but also they have been the ones which have encouraged public sector to take position. But Finland was also a country, the first country in the world which adopted circular economy roadmap, and it had a big impact to policies the governments have run ever since. So many ministries changed the way they do proposals, they change the priorities in order to boost circular economy development in our country. But yeah, so it's a nice combination between public policies, also and private sector activism. And I would say that Finnish industry is quite well placed when looking at how circular they are. It's not only about recycling waste, but it's also about creating, for instance, bio-based products. Or then they have changed the business model so that the services plays a bigger role than before.
But you mentioned bio-based economy. I think this is, Finland is seen, I would say, as this very a country rich in large nature areas. But Frans Timmermans mentioned biodiversity is one of the crises. What do you think is there a connection here to the circular economy?
Yeah, circular economy, as I said before, circular economy can be used for addressing climate change, reducing emissions, but also it's a key policy or key element when addressing biodiversity loss. Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund, will concentrate in coming years to biodiversity loss linkage to other policy areas. For instance, to put it short, I would like to see examples how we could put market economy to produce more biodiversity. So we cannot reserve all the areas. For instance, built environment we can preserve. So that's why we need new incentives to market to produce more biodiversity. And if there is anybody in the audience who is interested in this topic, just give us a call, because we are interested in to get some partners globally.
Well, thank you, Jyrki Katainen. I think there's a lot to take with us from here, but it would be great to hear from Roald Lapeyre. That's, I understand, quite a bit to react to, the biodiversity part, and before we heard about country examples. Jyrki Katainen has mentioned the procurement examples in the Netherlands, the roadmap work, but what would be your own personal success story that you would like to bring out from the success story as well?
Well, I would like to build upon the example Jyrki just gave of the textiles sector, and particularly the procurement. And this is interesting because indeed government procurement has big impact in countries like our own. In most European countries, government procurement is equal to 15% of GDP. So it's substantial. And he gave the example of the uniforms of our military. That was a first step. By starting that as a government, we now see also the biggest supermarket chain in the Netherlands has ordered full circular clothing for all their employees. So it is contagious. And that is, I think, what we really need to look for. And the same is in the building sector, the other example I think Jyrki just mentioned. This is a sector, of course, where government in infrastructure is a very big player. And by introducing circularity in its infrastructural projects, you can also set an example that can be contagious for the bigger building effort we have. And this goes much further than only our own countries. The mega cities of the world that will be developing in the decade to come, that really needs to be done in a way that suits with the SDG 12, which of course was mentioned by Inger Andersen, sustainable production and consumption. So the building effort we have should also be circular, and that I think is something as a government we could really set an example that is ready to follow.
Thank you. I would like to utilize this moment and take a few questions from the audience for our speakers. I think there was one that I found fascinating. How to make the transition to a CEE in the tourism sector that generates a huge amount of waste. And I think that's a very topical question. Roald Lapeyre, would you like to go ahead? I mean, are there initiatives in the Netherlands already being done as regards to this?
Well, there's many aspects to this, of course, but indeed, I think the tourist sector could set an example, and in the Netherlands, of course, they are part of our overall approach on circularity. But here, of course, there's also a big role for the tourists themselves, for ourselves. So when I just said that it's not just government and private sector, it's also citizens. So in our own behavior, we can play a very, very important part in reaching those targets also when we are a tourist.
Jyrki, would you like to add on to that? I mean, we have obviously Lapland tourism and fragile ecosystems in the north.
Yeah, indeed. And what I have heard from those who are involved in these businesses, they say that tourists are demanding more circularity, because especially in the areas where the nature is very precious and very, very delicate, if you like. So, the consumption patterns have changed. You don't want the same experiences everywhere. If you go to wilderness, you expect that things are sustainable from A to Z. So that's why I'm quite optimistic again, because to run successful business you need a good, robust demand, and this time the demand is asking for sustainable solutions.
And I think we have time for one more question, and I would pick out, and I thought this was interesting. How do we push circular economy amidst nationalism and protectionism? And I think that's again a fair point. Which one of you would like to go first?
Roald, go ahead.
That is not an easy question, but I think we should be fully aware of the fact that you can't be a front runner in circular economy on your own. Many of the sectors we were just discussing are long production chains that cross all around the world. So I think we need to cooperate with each other, with different countries in production chains to reach that circularity. So I would fully plea for international cooperation. That's why I believe a World Circular Economy Forum is very important, because we need to see eye to eye in the full production chain to reach that that circularity we're looking for. And this is certainly something you cannot do on your own as a country or as a company or as a citizen.
Actually, this question is very good also from trade point of view, because like the EU has been very active lately agreeing with third countries on trade agreements. And circular economy could be part of that, or could be part of these negotiations. So as much as the EU has created a single market for circular business models, we need a global markets for circular economy, and there the trade agreements comes to the picture. So basically, if you want to concretize it, we need to bring down market barriers which harm the circular business models. For instance, in many cases, secondary raw materials cannot flow as freely as virgin raw materials can flow across the border. So this is just one of the examples. And there, the trade negotiators or trading blocks can really make difference.
Fantastic. And I think we are running out of time, but Tim, would you like to wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think there's too much to unpack here to cover it all, but just for our viewers that we have, it's not just these 6 sessions. We have more than 70 online WCF online side events happening throughout the whole year. And there's actually one that Jyrki Katainen mentioned the role of trade just now, and on the 15th of October, do double check that. There's one on circular economy services trade specifically. And I think we'd like to thank our guests very much, Jyrki Katainen and Roald Lapeyre. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. But before moving forward to our next discussion, we have a special treat for you. Sitra has been collecting a selection of circular economy solutions that are among the most viable, promising, scalable and impactful in the world. And the list of 39 solutions has just been published. Please visit our Sitra website. Amongst them is T-Mill, a UK-based business that looks at the textile industry from a new perspective, producing T-shirts on demand.
The purpose of T-Mill is to make a working circular supply chain for clothing, and then to scale it by sharing all the technology we developed to make it possible. The circular economy is not about ripping apart the economy today and replacing it with something else. It's actually just an iterative improvement. And it looks and feels a lot like the economy at the moment. The t-shirt that I'm wearing is made out of waste, but it feels the same. The difference is that what we do is design out waste. And when we actually think about what that means from a business point of view, you're talking about recovering the product that you made and remaking it, instead of throwing that in the bin and going out and buying another one. Our message is really simple. This is working today with the technology that we've already got. So what are we waiting for?
That got me really excited. I'm a little bit biased because I used to live almost next door to T-Mill on the same tiny island. But Also because the pandemic has really highlighted the potential of customized over mass-produced. So we've heard from Frans Timmermans, has mentioned the European Green Deal, as has Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, referring to it as the motor and blueprint for our recovery. It is a transformative growth strategy for the European Union built on a carbon-neutral, fair and circular economy. We would now like to welcome the European Commissioner for the Environment and Oceans and Fisheries, who will say a few words about the regulatory development and especially of the Circular Economy Action Plan with its promising sustainable product policy framework, which has been referred to already. And also looking at why this is so important for businesses and the competitiveness of the whole European Union. Labas, Commissioner Virginijus Sinkevičius. Screen is.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for a greeting in Lithuanian. First of all, of course, thank you for inviting me to say a few words about our new EU Circular Economy Action Plan and the central place of the green transition in our recovery efforts. This new plan was born in very difficult times. When I presented it back in March, the coronavirus had already struck Europe hard, and ever since the economic and social impacts of the pandemic have aggravated, both business and policymakers have been put one of the hardest tests in probably recent history, and yet even in these times of crisis and change, the circular economy has remained on the top of our political agenda. And I would say that it even has climbed even higher. The circular economy agenda responds to a need to think together beyond the immediate crisis, to deliberately shape the recovery, to take the opportunity, and of course to build back better. With the new EU Circular Economy Action Plan, we have a model that builds resilience for consumers, for industry, and for society. And this is a plan to deliver the sustainable products and services of the future, to give our citizens what they want, products that last and a true right to repair. It is a plan to boost innovative technologies and business models enhanced by digitalization, and to create, of course, green jobs. We will address the sectors that have most to gain, batteries, vehicles, electronics, textiles, packaging, as well as food and the built environment. We will work to reduce waste and increase recycling. And for business, working together on creating the framework for sustainable products to make sustainable products the norm, not an exception. That will provide for business new opportunities. And I'm very glad to have Business Europe also on this panel, and I'm confident that together we can make this new plan work. So our new Circular Economy Action Plan is, of course, part of a bigger picture. You probably heard in earlier opening remarks by Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans. In the EU, the European Green Deal remains our compass on the way to act, react, repair, and prepare for a better future. And sustainability is also integrated in economic policy. This year we recommended to each EU member state to foster economic recovery by directing investments to the green and digital transitions, and the twin transition will be at the heart of national recovery and resilience plans. The circular economy provides many good ideas for investments, supporting both the green and the digital agenda. And I think this is, we're living in a times when there is no time for short-term fixes. We have to hold a steady course towards a sustainable and resilient future, and neither Europe nor any other continent or country can achieve the green transition on its own. We need to work on a coherent and coordinated response to the challenge of our generation, and this is the time for launching a smart combination of innovative policies, reforms, and investments. Most importantly, of course, to spread the word about the benefits of the circular economy, to work together for the future we want. And probably with all what I've said, it's a good time to give a floor to business. Thank you very much for your attention.
And so, giving the floor to business, I am delighted to say herzlich willkommen to Markus Beirer, Director General of Business Europe. Commissioner Sienkiewicz just described a circular economy action plan that is increasingly looking at the source upstream. Now we want to make the CE mainstream for companies. And would be particularly interested to hear from you what policies and investments are most needed to make this a reality from the point of view of the business community. And what tools does the EU Green Deal and its circular economy action plan provide for businesses? Please go ahead, Markus Beirer.
Thank you, Vera, and congratulations to you and team for your language skills. Pleasure to greet us all in our own languages. And let me also thank Commissioner Sienkiewicz, Virginius, for all you said, and effectively we are partners in this endeavor in making the EU circular economy agenda a success. I mean, we have long supported this EU circular economy agenda. We have also welcomed this new circular economy action plan, and we think, and has been alluded to already by Frans Timmermans, that this is imperative to become climate neutral by around mid-century, and it has been mentioned by many. We support it also because it makes absolute business sense. But in order to do so, it will be crucial that we really create a functioning market for quality secondary raw materials and also circular products, something which has been alluded to by Stintje, and I think this is a key story. Jyrki Katainen has been called the father of this program, together with Virginius, of course, and he called it the industrial arm of environmental policy, and I think this is a very good trademark, and that's what it is. And we think that in the action plans there's a lot of things we can do to really create these markets we need to make it flourish, by having more circular product designs, by creating better consumer awareness where we still have a gap, by creating high demand for circular products, but also by making sure that member states really implement what is already there in waste legislation and others, and that we also create more push on the global level and make sure that all G20 countries will have similar schemes. But of course, a lot is expected from business, and rightly so. And I can once again underline that we are fully engaged on this circular logic, and Virginius knows it, because again, it makes business logic. And I mean, we show it with more than 200 circular business examples in our dedicated webpage, www.circulary.eu, which I, of course, invite you all to check it out. We are developing new business models with various directions. And one of the main targets is, of course, to extend the lifetime of products. And this can, of course, be done in various ways. One is to develop product as a service business models, which in other words means that you no longer sell a product, but you lease it to your customer. And this means you retain ownership. It's easier for you to get it back at the right moment. It's easier for you to update it when necessary, and also to extract the raw materials and therefore contribute to circularity. The truth in the market is we still have several obstacles to overcome together in order to really make this flourish and to make these models to make these models profitable. One is we still have a consumer bias towards ownership, because first, I mean, everybody feels better when he owns something, and people also think it's cheaper. So there we need to overcome. There's learning costs. We precisely see that in the public sector, very often there is legal requirements, which at the end makes public procurement go the easy way and not enter into the legal necessities you have with a leasing contract. And last but not least, there's legal challenges. Of course, we need long-time relationships with the customer, and sometimes the mix of European and national company law is not allowing for this. So there's a lot we still have to look at together in order to really create the circumstances in order to make these new models flourish. But we think there is all reason to do so, and we stand ready to be partner of the European Commission and, of course, of Commissioner Sienkiewicz to really make this happen and to implement it in a coherent way, which makes business and environmental sense. Thank you.
Two excellent introductions, Markus Berer and Commissioner Virginijus Sienkiewicz. I want to remind our viewers, Markus Berer just mentioned ownership, that there are many side events happening through the year, and there's actually one on rethinking ownership. And I also want to remind you to keep posting questions. We have many coming in now, and we will try and direct as many as possible to the speakers. But a carbon neutral circular economy, it requires that we look at both energy and materials, but there is a third element as well, information. And I think also that Markus Berer has just mentioned the role of product as a service. And that is an example of how that is really important, as is this event, the importance of information. But another key information flow is that of finance. And the current 2030 climate and energy target requires an additional 260 billion euros of additional investments. It's a big investment gap. And how does the European Green Deal and the recovery package, especially the Next Generation EU, contribute to that? Let's hear from Commissioner Sienkiewicz.
Thank you very much for the question. So, to begin with, it's important that the European Deal provides a sound focus on the way to react and repair and prepare for a better future. It provides predictability for policy and, of course, investments. And in a matter of months, we presented the proposal for a climate law, the new Circular Economy Action Plan, followed by the Biodiversity Strategy 2030, and then Farm to Fork as well. Now we are focusing on their implementation. We will also deliver the chemical strategy for sustainability in October, followed by a zero pollution action plan for air, water, and soil next year. On the funding side, the Commission proposed a 700 billion recovery package, so-called the Next Generation EU, and a revamped budget in record time. It combines investment with much needed reforms and has the European Green Deal at its core. Once adopted, many new investments will run through the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which the European Council proposed to increase to 670 billion euro. And the leverage effect of the Next Generation EU and the EU budget is expected to result in more than 3 trillion euro of investments. And as President von der Leyen announced in her recent State of the Union speech, 37% of Next Generation EU will be spent directly on Green Deal objectives. So there is little doubt that this is the right way forward. Investing in green growth pays back and will help us to build back better. And we will use the new EU budget for the 2021-2027 to provide a much needed sustainable stimulus to the economy, but it will be a green stimulus. But for the green transition to happen, everybody, of course, has to play ball. Member states are to submit national recovery and resilience plans coherent with the European Green Deal and of course ensure that the whole EU budget spending is aligned with the green transition. And even then, public money can only provide a part of the green investments needed, which are enormous. We need an additional 240 billion per year to meet the current 2030 climate and energy targets, 100 billion per year to deliver on Europe's transport infrastructure.
Thank you, Commissioner Sienkiewicz.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of money, and I think we just want to invite Markus Beyer to provide some comments. This is a lot. There's a lot happening in this picture. There's the climate law, there's food to fork strategy, and the circular economy action plan as well. But are there more brushstrokes that you would like to add from the business side of things, Markus Beyer?
Well, first, I agree with Virginius. I mean, there's a huge investment necessity. I mean, the impact assessment shows that with the new targets, we talk about 350 billion euros a year investment gap, which, as we see it, is the lower end of a possible margin of investment needs. And this is close to 2%, 1.8 percentage points equivalent of GDP per year. So this is huge. So this means it's very important that there will be money coming from the European level. But of course, it will need to be leveraged by member states' money. And it's also very much about flanking measures, about framework conditions, meaning businesses need to be incentivized to do the real thing rather than having prohibitive approaches, because this is what will generate the investment we need. And of course, we also need a stable investment environment to generate this investment. So huge investment need, but the big opportunity as well.
Thank you, Markus Beyer.
Fantastic. Now we'll take some questions from the audience as promised. And Markus Beyer, you talked about incentives, and there's a good question from the audience that can we add higher taxes on products that have a very short life cycle? Would that be the right kind of incentive? And I would like to hear from the Commissioner as well, but Markus Beyer first.
Well, we think it's better to incentivize the right things than punishing other things, at least in the first step. And we also think, I mean, there's a lot of triggers we can still use. I mean, in the earlier panel, there was they alluded to public procurement. I mean, this is something we know. This is 14 to 15% of European GDP. So the trigger is huge. And even so, this was a priority. So far, it's not yet sufficiently used. We know that many public, I mean, there has been positive examples like the textiles and the Dutch army and so on. But we know that there's many more examples where at the end, the logic of public procurement is still mainly price driven. So we think there's a lot of triggers we have, but we think we should really incentivize the right things in order to boost the entrepreneurial creativity.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner, I will let you comment as well. And also, just as an add-on, the procurement idea has been mentioned already several times. Could we procure according to the alliance model, where the stakeholders could work together to achieve a common goals and objectives? That was a very sharp point from the audience questions.
I mean, of course, the green procurements is a way forward, but it will take some time. It will take some time to educate the not only the governments, but also the regional governments to really do it in the public. But Commission will work on that. Probably returning to the question how to support the transition. I think most importantly that circular economy help create new business opportunities. And between only 2012 and 2018, the number of direct jobs linked to the circular economy grew by 5%. And for example, repair and reuse of products such as clothes, furniture and electronic devices is labor intensive, and it is highly effective in keeping circular value in our economies by, of course, prolonging the product life. Remanufacturing also has great potential, from automotive to furniture and from aeronautics to electronics. The business case for individual companies is substantial, since manufacturing firms in the EU spend on average more than 40% of their input costs on materials, closed loop ones can increase their profitability while, of course, sheltering them from the resource price fluctuations and uncertainty in the market. So investment in circularity, of course, makes sense. It has been estimated that additional targeted investment of 320 billion by 2025 in the EU in free value chains would lead to a 7% of increase in EU GDP by 2030. So I think that's quite significant, and most importantly, that it will go in line with the reduction of CO2 by 17%.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you to both of our fantastic speakers. We had plenty of more questions from both the audience and ourselves.
Yeah.
There were so many things we didn't have time to cover with you, but I will say that if this is a direct invitation back to our next WCEF, hopefully either in the Netherlands or in Toronto, we'll continue this discussion. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. So Finland has been identifying sustainable recovery measures on a national level. Now we have with us the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, Krista Mikkonen. Tervetuloa, välkommen. I have followed the Finnish government's work on the recovery with great interest over the last few months, of course. And I think it would be good here to start with a bit of background. What has the Finnish government done to support a sustainable recovery with a circular economy, given the current circumstances? Krista Mikkonen.
Well, first I must say that when the COVID-19 crisis hit Finland, we were just in the middle of implementing our very ambitious government program. This program sets the target to become the world's first carbon neutral welfare state by 2035, building our future wealth on circular economy and stopping the biodiversity loss. So when the COVID crisis hit, the Finnish government committed already in May to designing our economic recovery measures in the way that supports our climate neutrality and circular economy goals. And this was very important as swift actions and decisions are needed in the changing circumstances. I appointed an advisory group for sustainable recovery to find measures that will create economic stimulus and jobs and work for climate and nature. And this advisory group is now finalizing its work and has already come forward with recommendations for measures and also set a criteria on how to assess their proposals.
And I think it would be interesting for the audience to hear how much money went into this and what did these investments actually cover, Krista Mikkonen?
We already in June, the Finnish government has implemented some 1.5 billion worth of measures this year which fulfill the criteria of sustainable recovery, such as replacing oil heating in housing and municipal buildings, subsidies for renewable energy, building rail infrastructure, investing in electrical vehicle charging stations. But we know that now we just start to think about how we are going to use the EU Recovery and Resilience Facility. And what we have decided already that we are gonna use at least half of that funding to the green transition objective, including circular economy.
Well, that's great. And I think there's last thing that we want to ask you is about biodiversity. And we've just learned that Jyrki Katainen has mentioned and it's featured in the previous discussions as well. But I want to hear from you, Krista Mikkonen. Can this be used also as a tool for circular economy? And how could that be done?
Yes, absolutely. As we know, the loss of the biodiversity, one of the main reasons are the land use which is too intensive, and also the too intensive use of the raw materials. So we know the circular economy can reduce the use of the raw materials and relieve land use pressure. So that these are very efficient tools to prevent biodiversity loss.
Thank you, Krista Mikkonen. I think do we have time for a quick question from the audience?
Absolutely, and I think it's really important that as we have Minister Mikkonen here now, there's a question from the audience that what should Finland learn from other countries to speed the transition to a CEE? I think that's a fabulous point of view.
I think it's very important to have global cooperation, because we have a global challenges, so we need global solutions. So this international partnerships between governments, civil society, business life and academia are very important, and I think there's a lot we can learn from that also in Finland, and I hope we can also tell what we are doing, and so the other countries can learn from us, because this is our common challenge, so we really need to work together.
I think it's fantastic that you mentioned global collaboration as obviously one of the things that the WCEF is a forum for collaboration. And as a last question to you, Minister, what's your expectations and for the outcomes of this forums? What are you looking forward to, or have you heard already something that took you by surprise?
I think we just need to continue this kind of discussion. Now we have a really extraordinary momentum, because now all over the world we need to recover from the COVID. And actually this is just one in a lifetime challenge, moment, and also the challenge. So we really need to use this momentum wisely and be sure that now when we are building back, we are doing it in a green way, and make sure that this is the moment we can change our societies to the low carbon societies, which also take care of the biodiversity and are changing the economy from linear one to the circular one.
Fantastic, thank you. A once in a lifetime opportunity. I think that's a great place to stop at. Thank you again, Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And wow, Tim,
wow.
we're at the end of the opening sessions, and I think we've been certainly touching the big picture, saving the humanity, once in a lifetime opportunity. I was struck by Timmermans' a vision of a global alliance of circular economy and sustainable economy. What are your thoughts?
No, indeed, I think just that actually. Timmermans really set the scene with and it's about the planet, yes, but this is really about people, and it's about saving humanity. I thought that was great. And there's so much more to unpack, and I really look forward to the next 5 sessions.
Oh, tell us what's happening next, when we'll be back again.
We'll be back in just a bit over an hour and a half. And I think this is, here we really touched upon the role of governments. But there are 2 sides of the circular economy where I think, two of the most important stakeholder groups, with government and businesses, that we have touched a little bit on here as well. But we will dig much deeper in the next session with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development in the role of COVID-19 on corporate circularity. So do join us again in just a bit over an hour and a half. Thank you.
Thank you.